The sea can be a dangerous place. Even with modern ships and modern technology, disasters can still happen. Collision, fire, and foundering can all lead to abandonment. When human lives are at risk, all seafarers owe it to themselves and their colleagues to understand their responsibilities. This series has been produced to supplement your ship's personal survival manuals, including the SOLAS Chapter 3 training manual and STCW requirements. This video looks at survival at sea after abandoning the ship. It cannot be stressed too strongly that your ship is your best lifeboat. Abandonment should only be undertaken as a last resort on orders from the master. Before abandonment, the ship's GMDSS distress functions are activated. Generally, there will be alerting both via Inmarsat and via DSC on one or more wavebands. The evacuees must be prepared to spend some time in the survival craft. They should put on extra clothing and head protection before evacuation. They should make every effort to keep dry. Once a survival craft has been launched, the priorities are to get away from the ship, assemble with other survival craft, and stream the sea anchor. To conserve body fluids, everyone, without exception, must take the seasick pills.
One for you. Okay, one for me.
If there is more than one survival craft, they should be secured together. This is one of the tasks of the motor-powered boats. There are 4 principal dangers to be faced. First, drowning. This is fatal in minutes. Second, the inability to maintain body temperature. This will be fatal in hours. Third, lack of water, which takes a few days to cause death. And fourth, lack of food. This only becomes a threat to life after several weeks.
Right, Dave, if you'd like to go look out.
Their priorities then are first to protect themselves against drowning and exposure. Second, to help rescue services locate them. And third, to conserve their water and food supplies. These priorities are summarized as protection, location, water, and food.
If you'd like to just check around you, make sure the raft is okay, check for any leaks.
Protection from drowning is provided by the survival craft, so it is essential that its condition is kept under constant watch with regular inspections. Protection from exposure poses different problems in different climates. In hot climates, the sun's heat accelerates the loss of body fluids. This can lead to dehydration and even death by an increase in body temperature, heat stroke. In cold climates, life jackets and thermal protective aids should be used to insulate the evacuees and so prevent heat loss. In totally or partially enclosed lifeboats, the evacuees are well protected from exposure. In hot climates, the door and coxswain's window can be opened for ventilation if sea conditions permit. Protection against exposure is a high priority in cold climates. Shelter and clothing are essential to reduce heat loss. If heat loss is not reduced, the body cannot generate enough heat to maintain body temperature. The result is hypothermia. First, survivors lose the use of their hands, then the use of their arms and legs. Incapacity is followed by apathy, loss of consciousness, and finally death. The first defense against exposure is clothing. It insulates the body. The material traps the heat by means of tiny air pockets. This insulation is reduced dramatically by strong wind and even more so by water. As the heat loss in water is 26 times that in air at the same temperature, it follows that if clothes become wet, their insulating effect is lost.
Okay, this guy looks a bit in trouble. He's got a wet t-shirt. You two like to get his t-shirt off, and we'll pass that to Dave to wring out.
So wet clothes must be removed and wrung as dry as possible before being put on again. The life raft entrances must be closed. Evacuees must make every effort to stay dry and to keep each other warm. In survival situations, cold as a killer is second only to drowning.
Okay, do you want to wipe the floor? And then once you've wiped the floor...
Any water in the survival craft must be bailed out using the bailer and sponge. Keep one sponge away from salt water. It can then be used to collect condensation from the inside of the canopy or exposure cover. Once dry, if the floor is inflatable, it must be inflated in cold climates or in cold water conditions. Occupants should huddle together for warmth, but must ensure that the stability of their craft is not upset. The evacuees may have to deal with delayed shock, hypothermia, and overwhelming feelings of depression, confusion, despair, and possibly panic. The survival chances of evacuees will depend upon their training, their equipment, and their mental attitude, their will to live. This will be greatly influenced by the leadership of those in charge. Strength of mind will often be more important than strength of body. Those who find that they can act positively must assert themselves. Keep people occupied and organized into a team. Check the survival manual for information and instructions.
Okay, and Mario, if you go inside lookout.
Watches should be established with one inside lookout and one outside lookout as a minimum.
Speak up loud. David, yeah. How do you feel? Yeah, I'm alright.
They must be maintained on a 24-hour basis. Changeovers should be frequent, particularly for the outside lookout. The inside watchman checks on injured personnel and on the state of the survival craft. It's a good idea to have a regular roll call. This helps check that the evacuees are not suffering from hypothermia or excess carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide can build up rapidly, and so the life raft will need to be vented regularly. The outside lookout keeps watch for rescue ships and aircraft, or any survivors. He or she will bear the responsibility for the second priority, location. The EPIRB, SART, radar reflectors and VHF radios will help the rescue services locate the evacuees. But the outside lookout may see them before they see the survival craft. So evacuees must keep all signaling aids at the ready. The satellite EPIRB is designed to alert the rescue services and to give them an accurate position of the evacuees. EPIRB stands for Emergency Position Indicating Radio Beacon. Because of their significance to the rescue services, they're among the most important items of safety equipment on your ship. Satellite EPIRBs form part of the equipment a ship needs to carry to comply with the Global Maritime Distress and Safety System, the GMDSS. The GMDSS incorporates two satellite systems, the Inmarsat system and the SARSAT system, and their respective Earth stations. Coast radio stations, rescue coordinating centres, and all ships are included. A distress signal from an EPIRB, whether it is a SARSAT or an Inmarsat EPIRB, is relayed to Earth stations and then via landlines to the nearest rescue coordination centre. Both SARSAT and Inmarsat EPIRBs are designed to float free from the ship in case of sinking. They then self-activate. So even if no one sends a distress signal, alerting still takes place. Both types of EPIRB can be activated on board for distress alerting. With the Inmarsat system, emergency response time at a shore installation is 2 to 3 minutes, with an accuracy of 1 to 2 nautical miles. For the SARSAT EPIRB, mean response time is 90 minutes, with an accuracy of 10 nautical miles. But of course, the actual arrival time of the rescue services will depend on local circumstances. The SART, the Search and Rescue Radar Transponder, is another part of the ship's GMDSS equipment. It must be carried into the survival craft and switched on. It remains passive until interrogated by a ship's radar. It must be secured at least 1 metre above sea level to give it adequate range. Many survival craft are fitted with special brackets for this. The SART will help the rescue services to pinpoint the survival craft. Do not use the pyrotechnics until the rescue services are in sight. The supply of them is limited. Always read the instructions carefully before use. Each pyrotechnic will be contained in its own individual water-resistant casing. There will be clear instructions on it. They all have self-contained ignition systems. Parachute flares should be used when ships have been sighted by day or by night. The flare must rise to 300 meters and burn for a minimum of 40 seconds. All survival craft have 4 of these. Smoke canisters should be used for both ships and aircraft in daytime. You should find 2 in your life raft or lifeboat. They have a burning time of 3 minutes in calm water and are able to withstand submersion. They're not very effective in winds above force 6. Hand flares are for short-range signalling only. There will be 6 on board. They burn for at least 1 minute. When used according to the manufacturer's instructions, they will not endanger the survival craft by dropping burning residues. Another means of signalling is the heliograph. This simple device for reflecting the sun has an effective range of at least 5 miles. Once the priorities of protection and location are under control, attention should be given to the sick and injured. This is best left to those with specialist training. In the absence of skilled personnel, try to prevent bleeding and protect those suffering from shock or exposure. The first aid outfit includes bandages, antiseptic cream, pain-killing tablets, and a first aid manual. Shock is a state of collapse that may occur after any serious injury. Victims should be kept warm, laid flat, and if conscious, given frequent sips of water. except for those with stomach injuries. In very cold climates, frostbite is a possible hazard. It occurs when the flesh actually freezes. The consequences can be severe. Survivors must always be on the lookout for it in themselves and in others. This is why the outside lookout must be changed frequently, and warm headgear must be worn.
So how are you doing?
Alright, but my...
Keep moving to encourage circulation, and, if necessary, give massages.
Okay, let's have a look then.
Applying a warm hand can thaw small areas. Larger areas, such as feet, can be warmed by being placed in a companion's clothing. The pain, when circulation returns, can be severe, and painkillers may be administered. In cold conditions, you should use your survival craft's immersion suits and TPAs.
Try to stop that freezing up.
Is that okay? How's your nose?
It's tingling a bit, like with burning sensation in it.
Okay.
The next priority is water supply. To readjust the body fluid balance, no water should be drunk in the first 24 hours, except for those who have lost blood or are burned.
Drink it with one of these beakers, which is here.
The water in the emergency pack can be supplemented by catching water. If it has come off the exposure cover or canopy, the first water must be discarded, as it will be salty and contaminated by dye and talcum powder. All water collected should be checked and discarded if it is unfit to drink.
So, just let go. Okay.
There may be large amounts of condensation. This should be collected with the sponge that has been kept salt-free. Some life rafts have desalination kits, but these only purify a specific quantity of water. Others are fitted with portable reverse osmosis pumps. Be sure to read the instructions properly before using them. Everyone should have a bowel movement within the first 24 hours, while they still have sufficient body fluid to lubricate it. In a survival craft, you will get to know well your fellow passengers. After 24 hours, a water ration of 1/4 to 1/2 litre should then be issued daily. It is recommended that the daily ration be issued in 3 equal parts, at sunrise, midday and at sunset, to each survivor. The ration should be drunk slowly, keeping the water in the mouth before swallowing. Water is needed to remove salts from the body. Never drink seawater or urine, as these will have the opposite effect and will kill you much faster than slow dehydration.
Drink the water slowly now.
With the reduced water intake, urine will be very dark. No food should be consumed except for the carbohydrate-based survival craft supplies, unless water is in plentiful supply. A well-nourished person can survive a month or longer without food. So worry about the water rather than the food.
Okay, Rob, there's your ration.
Alcohol has no place in the treatment of hypothermia or in any survival situation. If any has been brought on board, it must be discarded. Keep the bottles for holding rainwater.
Tip that out, please.
Smoking may present a problem. It is a potential hazard to a life raft or a lifeboat, and non-smokers may object. The coxswain must insist that smokers pool their cigarettes to avoid bad feelings as supplies run out. Although being in a survival craft may be uncomfortable, you are far more likely to survive there than in the water. For those survivors who find themselves alone in the water, the priorities of protection and location remain the same. The main dangers are drowning and heat loss. Unless the sea temperature is above 33 degrees Celsius, you will lose heat to the water. Do as little as possible. Don't bother to take off your shoes or boots. They provide insulation. It's not worth wasting the effort to take them off. When you first enter cold water, you will be subject to cold shock. You will breathe rapidly for up to 5 minutes, and your heart rate will also go up. Don't swim, and do as little as possible until this phase has passed. After that, maintain your body heat by tightening up any wrist, neck, and ankle fastenings of your clothing. In rough conditions, turn your back to the wind and waves to keep your mouth and nose clear of spray. Movement uses up energy and also increases heat loss by moving water in and out through your clothing. Keep your legs together. Keep calm. Draw the knees up and tuck the arms into the sides. Preserve your energy by swimming as little as possible. Use your collar to protect your neck. Best of all, take a hat with you. The head and neck are the areas of greatest heat loss. If there is more than one survivor in the water, they must keep as close to each other as conditions allow. This will break up wave motion, reduce heat loss, and make the survivors easier for the rescue services to see. They should not tie themselves together. If you can switch off the life jacket lights, only one life jacket light needs to be on. It is important in survival situations to maintain morale and the will to live, to keep warm and dry, and to conserve water supplies. Remember the 4 priorities: protection, location, water, and food. You need to make yourself familiar with the life-saving appliances on your ship.
A rescue or airplane or another ship is the
Make sure you know your duties as designated on the muster list. Study the ship's general emergency plan and participate fully in all training and drills.
This is the food rations. One of the food rations. Every person.
Abandonment of a ship is very rarely necessary, but it is a risk faced every day by those who go to sea. Only fools have no fear of the sea, and only fools do not prepare with good training and the proper equipment to meet the worst possible eventualities. Read the training manuals on your ship. Watch this video series again. You have a duty to yourself and your colleagues in a survival situation. Be certain that you can fulfill it.